Welcome to the Black Men Think podcast. If this is your first time here, know that the views and opinions expressed by the Black Men Think podcast are those of the Black Men Think podcast and not the individual members. With that being said, we're about to be unapologetically, undeniably black. Enjoy.
Yeah, man, we're here. I don't even know
Yeah.
where to begin with this one. I feel like we're on a run with talking to our GSU family.
Well,
And
it's because there's a lot of greatness that came from GSU. I mean, let's just go ahead and put it out there. The Georgia State University.
Georgia, I was gonna go there, and I'm glad you said it. But today, man, we have a brother who I'm super proud of, and whether he know it or not, I look at his IG very intently, and I'm super proud of who he is, and particularly what his shape and shaping his children and the way that he puts on his wife on a pedestal. I love that and just everything that he's doing. So without further ado, we have Jamaal Greer on the Black Man Think podcast, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I appreciate y'all brothers having me.
Hey, man.
Yes, sir.
Anytime we can get some Georgia State alum on the podcast, bro, we all for it. We all for it.
And low key, Jamal, he was the trendsetter before we ever arrived. I mean, he was already on campus, already, swag surfing and so on and so forth in the plaza. On Tuesdays and Thursdays before we ever knew anything about it. We were still drinking Similac. He was in the building.
So tell us, just kind of reflecting on that. I know we kind of just mentioned it, but I honestly I don't remember our first encounter at Georgia State at all. But it's just kind of like one of those things where we just knew mutual people and kind of started from there. So if you want, just kind of talk about that time period, for you, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, man. GSU was transformational. It definitely changed the trajectory of my life. So I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin at that. So knew I wanted to move to Atlanta after like 96, hearing Southern Playlist of Cadillac music.
Hey.
After some cousins of mine had been down here for the Olympics, brought that tape back, the cassette tape back to Madison.
And not the cassette.
The cassette tape. And I dubbed it on a little, you had the, back then I had the double cassette, so I had the two stereos face to face, playing and recording.
Factual.
So when I had the opportunity to come to Georgia State, I actually was coming to, I wanted to move to the South. I had applied to Alabama State and Tennessee State. And then my brother got into the Art Institute of Culinary Arts here in Atlanta. Because I went to D3 school to play basketball first. And then when he was coming down, I didn't have the grades or the money to go to Tech or Morehouse. I didn't really know any other schools down here. I didn't have the grades to get into UGA. I actually Googled colleges and universities in Atlanta. And the first one that popped up was Georgia State.
Wow.
Saw the website. I was like, oh, this is dope. I applied, got in. I had never been to Georgia State until the first day I got to register for my classes.
Wow.
Had never seen
crazy.
It. Right. So got there, man, met solid brothers like y'all, my brothers D and Cornelius and Reggie.
Shout out. Yeah, the squad.
9 guys. My sisters, Elise and Elena, Rolanda, all of them. And then the best part, met my wife at Georgia State.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, dude, it was to this day my main network of people who I still keep in contact with and work out with. Shout out to my boys, Mike Robinson and Rashad.
Big Black, what's up, Black?
Yeah, so we still kick it weekly, dang near. So it was super transformational, man. Like I said, I met my wife. Here we are, 18 years and 2 kids later. And I'm basically I've been in Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta now longer than I ever lived in Wisconsin.
I can relate.
This past summer, yeah. So Georgia State was amazing. That was my first time having like Black professors, Black teachers, seeing Black cops, Black politicians. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, if you're from the South, I think a lot of people take it for granted. And when you grow up in the city, I had 2 Black teachers my entire K through sophomore year of college. I transferred to Georgia State. 2.
Wow.
Third grade, and senior year. I'm sorry, 3. I had 3rd grade, Miss Evans, 11th grade history, Miss Parks, and senior year weight training, Coach Davis.
Wow.
Right. That was it.
Unreal.
That was it. Never had a Black principal. My mom was one of only 3 Black guidance counselors in the entire district. So it was a whole different experience growing up, never being more than 3 or 4 kids of color in the classroom, K-12, and then come to Georgia State and like literally getting culture shock in reverse.
Yeah.
I never forget my first experience. My first class happened to be African American Studies. Shout out to Umoja.
Yeah.
The
great.
The GSU GOAT.
Yeah.
And it was his TA who was running the class at the time. And I was just sitting there in shock because it was like only 2 white kids in the whole class. And it's like 30 kids in GCB. And I'm just looking around. They asked a question. I answered a question. The next question, he calls a young lady. And he goes, "You got something to say?" She's like, No, not about this, but about, I got a question for him, pointing at me. He was like, "Where are you from? You talk different." I go, "Wisconsin." The entire class in unison. Wisconsin.
Oh man.
In Wisconsin. So
discovery.
Yeah, right. The GSU was amazing, man.
That's real. So look, I just got one question. Where did the passion come from, like to pour into the youth? Like, where did that really come from? Because we see it so often, but like, where does your passion to pour into youth come from?
Appreciate it. I think it's twofold. It's 1, my parents, and then 2, my journey. My dad has been a youth pastor, done prison fellowship, led youth groups. Even to this day, he's his job is to help churches set up men's ministries and strengthen fathers and husbands. My mom, like I said, was a guidance counselor. So they used to run, from the time I can remember I was born, they ran Young Life youth groups. Those who aren't familiar, Young Life is like a nationwide youth ministry program. And so they've been running Young Life youth groups. I mean, I have baby pictures. I'm being held by one of their high school members, students of their youth group.
Wow.
That's one big piece. Because that's all I've ever seen is my parents give back and pour into people. And then 2, I was that kid who, even though I came from a great home, 2 parents, my parents been married, I'm 42 years. Dad was always in the picture. Mom was always in the picture, super active, prayed for me every day, kept me involved and stuff. I was still a knucklehead. Went to 2 middle schools and 3 high schools. A lot of people don't know that part.
Really?
Yeah. Temper issue.
Okay, so you was murking a few of them along the way, huh?
Yeah, man. I wouldn't start it, but as soon as it started, I wasn't stopping until I ended it.
I got you.
So that was my issue. So I was never an instigator. I was never no bully. I was actually a small kid growing up. Dude, I was 5'9", 5'10", $150 when I graduated high school. So knowing the importance of the mentors and the network and support system my parents put around me, and how that guided me and basically saved my life, because there's no way without that I wouldn't be in jail or dead by now, the way I was going at 16, 17. And so from that point on, I knew like I need to make sure if I needed that with 2 parents in the household and a very strong Christian household, then I knew, the importance of what I could do, helping out others who didn't have that.
Wow. And you mentioned your journey too, Jamaal. Tell us, I mean, how did that childhood develop into a student who, was college bound, and then from college, obviously the many different facets of Georgia State, the different type of people that you experienced there? How did that launch you into a future in child development?
Gotcha. Yeah. So actually, I was not a college bound student.
Okay.
Dude, I graduated high school with a 1.8 cumulative GPA.
Wow.
Right. my mother, like I said, was a guidance counselor and an alum of the school I originally went to, UW Whitewater. It's a small D3 school in Wisconsin, right in between Madison and Milwaukee. She's an alumni, graduated summa cum laude there, and then was also sending a ton of talented students there. And so she actually filled out my college application, and she talked with the director of diversity and some admissions folks and got me in. So that's how I even got to college in the first place. So, and I was not a college-bound student at all. Thank the Lord for a praying mother. So she got me in. But even before that, I loved working like basketball camps. So originally I wanted to be a PE teacher. I like sports. I like teaching kids how to play sports. I'm gonna be a PE teacher. By the time I got to G State and I finished my prereqs, I did not score well in like other sciences and stuff. So having to take anatomy phys and kinesiology and all of that kind of stuff, man, while, I was working 2-3 jobs when I was at Georgia State too. A lot of people don't know that. It was
I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah, dude. I was working at City Atlanta Parks and Rec, and I was working for the Atlanta Hawks Community Development Department and Bloomingdale's.
That's a mixture, man.
Yeah, dude. But I was down here by myself, so I didn't have to pay rent. I had to pay tuition. I had to do all of that. So I met I ended up getting an advisor named Dr. Calloway. I don't know if y'all ever met Jimmy Calloway at Georgia State. He was super dope, one of like the best kept secrets there. He was basically like, because I had a bad advisor too that made me take some classes I shouldn't have took. So anyway, he was like, dude, you can switch into recreation management, run rec programs and youth programs, and not have to do student teaching or keep taking kinesiology and all those kind of courses. I changed my major right there in his office. So he actually got my first job working in the City Atlanta Parks and Rec. I loved it. Still keep in contact with a lot of those kids to this day. That was 2004, I think, or 3 or 4. They're grown. One just had her second child. So, I mean, it's just an amazing journey. I started coaching there, coaching basketball. My first basketball team I coached was there, 8 and under basketball team. And then from there, just really always wanted to be involved with that. So I went from City of Atlanta Parks and Rec. I went from Fulton County Parks and Rec to City of Atlanta, City of Roswell, City of East Point Parks and Rec. And Atlanta city politics, as you all know, it's super crooked and lazy, right? So Parks and Rec is no different. So when I graduated with a degree in recreation and sports management, they wouldn't give me a full-time job in the city of Atlanta. I had one actually coworker tell me, they're not going to hire you because you're either going to take their job or you're going to make them have to work hard. And a lot of these folks don't want to do that. So it's kind of stuck for a minute. And my brother, Dion Harrison, man, shout out to Dion Harrison. He actually was with a nonprofit called Communities and Schools of Atlanta. They do dropout prevention in elementary, middle, and high schools all throughout Metro Atlanta. And so he got me an interview. I used to run an open gym at Peachtree Hills when I was working in City Atlanta. He came and was like, yo, you really go with those kids? Would you want to work in the school system? I'm like, yes. Yes. And so he got me in there. And shout out to him, he actually owns Milk and Honey off of Cascade now. So
no way.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Milk and Honey. I used to get my hair cut right beside Milk and Honey.
Yeah, so that's his restaurant. So they actually left the school system and he's been killing it. But when I got with community schools, I was placed at Kennedy Middle School. Now it's no longer, it's another school now, but it was Kennedy Middle School in the Bluff. And if you're familiar with Atlanta, the Bluff is the Bluff, Snow in the Bluff, all of that. Simpson Road,
right.
Lowry, all of that, man, and loved it. Had a great work family there, man. We did a lot of good stuff there. A lot of turnaround projects there. Still talk to a lot of those students. Actually, just talked to one today. He's going to grad school.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was an amazing experience for 4 years there. Left Kennedy because they had some financial communities and schools. Actually, when that housing market and everything crashed, they lost some funding too. So left City with up there. Ended up going with Boys and Girls Club, helping launch the one of the 2 pilot sites for the Centers of Hope, America's Sam Reed Centers of Hope Initiative, over in Thomasville Heights, which is another right connected to Four Seasons Project.
Yeah.
So another hood, if you know Atlanta, you know Four Seasons is like the car theft capital of the state.
Yep.
But once again, a place where you can make a huge difference. Any impact you make is magnified just because, you know, it's not happening there for a lot of these kids. So
yeah,
that's around the time, you know, you start hearing kids tell you, hey, Mr. Greer, you know, you're the only, once you get a little older, that's like, you're the only dad I've ever known. Like, I don't know any dudes who are there for the dads. I never met a husband until I saw you. So we had a great team there. As myself, a guy named Manny Reed, my boy Josh Dickerson, Keisha Page, man. The impact made there was huge. Ended up because of my work there, a guy came through on a tour, liked what I was doing, and was like, "Hey, man, I know this. I'm not trying to poach you or anything, but I know this nonprofit you'd be perfect fit for. It's called the Posse Foundation.
Yep.
I'm actually on the board there, and if you're interested, I could set up a meeting." And I'm like, you know, sounds dope. Get kids into college. I'm like, that's the next step. You know, I've helped kids, you know, get into high school or stay in high school. And now it's the next step of trying to help those same kids get on the college campus. So we set that up, got an interview there, ended up getting the job. Another amazing 4 years. Posse Foundation is an amazing program. It's a college scholarship program where they send 10 kids in groups together to universities who usually struggle to recruit talented kids from the Southeast. So my schools were Syracuse, George Washington, Texas A&M, and Brandeis University, which is in Boston.
Okay.
We sent 10 kids to each of those schools with full tuition scholarships.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. So help train them for 8 months before they get to campus, then visit campus 4 times a year to, you know, make sure they're straight, meet with their mentors that are on campus. That's how I met Dulce, who now works with Marlon.
Yeah. Yep.
She was on my Posse Scholars there.
Absolutely.
Woman. And then from there, met a guy from my work there that it was a new charter school in Buckhead named Atlanta. I won't say the name because charter school in Buckhead.
For sure.
Ended up becoming the dean of students there. And that is when I really realized I wanted to work with our kids only. Well, not only, but predominantly our kids. In our spaces. So I work with any kid as long as in our space, our neighborhoods, our communities, our programs, things like that. Because my 2 years on the kids showed me that they don't care about us on a large scale. There are some really great people, but there's a lot of them that are just so conditioned to see us one way, so conditioned to assume certain things about us, so conditioned that they don't even understand what they're doing is detrimental to others.
You know, it's crazy you mentioned that, Jamaal, because I mean, you know, we even chat often just about the importance of representation, you know, in our communities, first of all, but definitely for the youth in our communities. I mean, you know, I think it's become a nationwide conversation, which is amazing at this point, where students need to see successful versions of them, especially Black students, right? Because everything in our media is shooting in a totally different direction. So, you know, based on what you're saying, I mean, you know, you're obviously speaking to the importance of them seeing Black men at that.
Right.
You know, our young boys seeing Black men who are leaders, who are intelligent, you know, who aren't removed from their backgrounds, who aren't removed from the streets, aren't removed from the realities of hardships and challenges and things that honestly other races wouldn't understand because they haven't even lived through it. They don't have that attached to the color of their skin, but they need help navigating those paths. What are some of the experiences that you've had that have been impactful that have even shaped you while you're shaping younger students?
Yeah, man, I think there's been a couple, man. I remember some certain ones stick out. Like I said, the first brother who told me this when he was having a kid right out of college, and I coached him from the time he was 16 till he was graduating. He would just call me just all the time, and I'm like, man, I really appreciate you calling me. He said, no, coach, you don't understand. Like I've never seen a husband. I'm 21.
Wow.
The only husband I've known, and you're not some old dude from the church or, you know, my old principal or something. Like you at this time when I was coaching them, dude, they were 17 under and I was 23, 24. So I wasn't that much older than them.
Right.
And and by the time I got done coaching, I'm married, but I got married at 26.
Okay.
So they're like 21, 20, graduating college. And I'm married. Even when I was, I've been with Angela for 4 years before I got married. So that I remember the first time I realized how detrimental our media and music and our things we support could be. I was at Thomasville Heights, and a young man was arguing with me that everybody fights. I'm like, no, we don't. He's like, so Mr. Coach Greer, so you walking down the street, somebody just bumping your shoulder and don't say nothing. I'm like, I'm gonna go home. I'm not working.
Right.
Like people are crazy out here. I can't be not home to my family because a brother bumped me on the street. It's like, so you ain't gonna fight him? I'm like, no, you just lying because you work here. I'm like, brother, we don't. I haven't got another fight in 15 years.
Yeah.
No, man, I don't believe it. And so we ended up having to call like all the staff. We all having this powwow in the teen center because he's not the only one that feels like this.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, he's like, my grandma got in a fight last week. I'm like,
man,
this is wild. And I'm like, we don't fight as adults. He was like, man, even the rich niggas on TV fight. Talking about Atlanta, Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, wow, this brother is 15.
And that's
and
all
he honestly believes that you still fight when you're grown.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
hearing you say that really puts things in perspective for me because our upbringing is everything, right? And for us, all of us have very similar backgrounds. Like mom and dad married, I know I have other siblings, but Marlon is the only child. But we just grew up in a Christian background, going to church every Sunday. And the one thing that I had to really truly understand is like that's not everybody's reality, right? I had best friends who, when they came to my house, that's all they saw, family. Now, one of my best friends, his parents have been divorced for years. My other homeboy, his dad in the picture, but they were never married. You know what I mean? And so when I started looking around, I'm like, yo, because to me it's just normal. But just to hear you tell that story where a kid, his reality is that we don't tolerate disrespect at all. And he's looking at someone bumping into him accidentally as disrespect and don't know how to diffuse the situation and move on. So, man.
Like in our upbringing, hip hop was like just an expression, an art form. It wasn't a reality. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't assume that these dudes were actually still doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you knew they might have done it in the past and they rap to get out of that, just like we saw dudes hoop to get out of their situation, things like that. But these kids, if that's all they've seen. You know what I mean? Also, we grew up with, Cosby Show, Different World, Family Matters, Good Times, different Black family shows.
Right.
They're growing up Blackish, maybe, if you watch it.
Maybe.
At the best, at that.
You know what I mean? At the best, if you watch. You know what I mean?
They grew up with what you just said, like Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like that's really what they're seeing, a reality, and it's skewed, bro, because number one.
No. Make it even more plain. They grew up with World Star.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's what they grew up with.
They get access to it. And it's like, dude, Different World showed me I'm going to college. Even in my most knuckleheaded state, in my mind, I was still going. I mean, my father used to say, boy, you are so unrealistic. You think you're going to college, your grades and your attitude. I'm like, yeah. Theo went.
Right.
He didn't have good grades. He went to college. Denise went. She was sweetie. You know what I'm saying? But in my mind, I knew I was going to college.
That's interesting though, man. Like to look at all that kind of stuff. The programming that we had growing up as kids, it was there. It was put in place for us. Like these are the things that we're doing, no matter our circumstances, right? Because even if you look at a show like A Different World, there were people from all different backgrounds at HBCU, bro. And it's just amazing now. And I'm sure, because we're in a time where content is so prevalent and you have literally thousands and hundreds of thousands of people putting out video every couple of minutes, you get a chance to choose what you want to see. And the unfortunate part is our youth is not necessarily choosing the right things to see. they're kind of tainted with this false reality of what we call social media now, right? Like we are lucky enough to have grew up in an era where we saw social media come and we see it turn to what it is now. It used to
Right.
be for us just a way to see who was in Athena, or who's in Olympia, or who's in Sparta, but now it's like
Right.
literally, bro, like this is their lifeline. This is all they know. When social media went down, what, a couple of weeks, like a week ago or whatever, like,
Lost their mind.
but folks lost their mind. And it wasn't until like 6 o'clock that I even noticed that it was down.
Yeah.
Dude,
know what
the
I
only
mean?
reason
Like,
I even knew it was down was that there was supposed to be a parents' town hall for APS parents,
mm,
right? And they sent out a mass text saying, "Hey, it's been rescheduled because Facebook is down."
wow.
I'm like,
Wow.
that's weird. That was like it was like 3 or 4 o'clock when I got that text.
Yeah.
Because I
Wow.
was like, "Oh, Facebook's down." You know what I'm saying? Because you at work, you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want it, but not all the time. And so it's just weird. And the programming, and this is why, because of everything like social media and the different kinds of media we have that the kids are being exposed to, this is why I am convinced the only way we save our kids is through the school system, right? It's like if you look at any major movement that has been detrimental, it's through indoctrination through the schools, right? You indoctrinate these kids first and make it tolerable. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, you make that tolerable. Because who else has a young young mind soaking up information
Right.
Every day at that.
day, every single day?
Yeah. That's real.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if your kid goes to school, they spend more time on average with their teacher during the school year than they do with you.
Oh, because you just blew my mind just then. How do you reprogram the school systems?
Yes. So my biggest pet peeve with Atlanta or any other predominantly Black school system is that we still indoctrinate our Black children with the same white lies that everyone else has been told for centuries, right? It's like when I'm in Wisconsin and it's a white woman telling me Christopher Columbus discovered America, I'm like, you're just saying that because you white and he white. I can imagine every Black teacher I had also telling me that. Because then it becomes real to me. Like, oh, for real, he must have. You know what I mean? This whitewashed history that we go. We took a tour in DC with the charter school I was talking about in Buckhead. And we actually went to George Washington's plantation. We took Black and brown children to a plantation.
Wow.
And when I tell you, the tour guide was saying things like, George Washington was known for being so friendly to his slaves that, he actually let the men were on one side of the plantation, the women the other, and on the weekends they got to go and be with their families as long as they got back to work on time on Monday. I'm like,
and we're supposed to
yeah, that's segregation.
That.
You know what I mean? I said,
that's tearing your family apart. If you want to,
right? I said, so what happened if I didn't go back? Oh, well, it never really happened. I said, no, they would have been whipped. Let's be real. So I'm on this tour, basically being Malcolm X, and and we're having these debriefs every night, and I'm going off. Mind you, I'm the only Black male on the trip. There's only 2 Black employees, me and the nurse.
Sure.
And she's a sweetheart. She's not really.
She came from the smoke. She was like,
but she
Jamaal,
would. It's like she's been there a minute, and she's not an admin. She's not an administrator. So like he goes off, she's going off on her boss. I'm going off on a coworker.
Gotcha.
And so it was just it's crazy. So the reason I like where I work now is because we are making those steps towards doing and setting the example for what should be done. So one, I work at the RISE schools now. We're a K-8 charter school in East Point.
East Point, shut up, South Side.
Your child, South Side, Southwest. It's K through 5, RISE Grammar, and then 6 through 8 is our RISE Prep. With our RISE High School, RISE College Prep coming soon for our high school, 2023, fall 2023. We are the only school in Georgia that has 52% Black male faculty and staff.
Man,
unbelievable.
So important. Bro,
unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I don't know how many others in the country do. I know I think there's a school in New York, and I forget the system. They made that movie about them. Saving Superman or Becoming Superman, whatever that charter school network is in New York. I forget what it's called. I think there's one or so in DC, but we're the only school in Georgia. And that's intentional. The way we recruit staff, the way we train staff, and things like that. We're also a social justice initiative school. So social justice is ingrained in our curriculum every Friday. We call it Freedom Fridays. And so there are a couple different areas of social justice, and I'm going to get one of these wrong. And Dr. Kia James, please don't kill me if you hear this. But, environmental justice, race, ethnicity, and gender justice, and God, I'm blowing my mind. Anyway, financial justice.
Financial. Okay.
So we talk about things like redlining. We talk about things like food deserts. We talk about things going on that have been going on during the pandemic. That kids are schools acting as if you not addressing it is like the kids aren't going to notice. That is ridiculous.
Man,
you're saying more by not saying something than you are by actually addressing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This pandemic, Jamaal, look, we got to talk about that for a second in the world of education. How, from your lens and from the variety of ways that you've impacted the community and been in positions to speak to young Black males and females, what is this pandemic going to do to our communities in terms of, is it, I don't know, is it going to make that gap, that equity gap, definitely larger? Okay.
100%. 100%.
What do we do with that? Goodness.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. I think the main reason is just access, right? It's like, what did you have access to during that pandemic? Did your parent have to work? Did they not? My children were blessed. One, they live with two people who work in schools. Excuse me. Who could get them laptops? Who would order them books on Amazon? Who got them workbooks throughout the summer to make sure they were, on point. But those who didn't, do we have kids coming back to school that had never, I think it was something like 40%, it was like something like over 30% of Atlanta public school students were chronically truant or non-existent during shutdown, right?
Wow.
They couldn't even find a lot of these kids. So,
man, unbelievable.
We were out for almost a full year. If you was almost out for almost a full year, how do you make that time up? How do you make that time up? You know what I mean? Like, and then you factor in the burnout with the teachers. The main problem is people are trying to have us come back into schools if nothing happened. And it happened. Like, this actually happened. Like, people lost lives. People lost relatives. People lost their sanity. Like, these kids were either, let's say you're in a household that doesn't have food. You reply, like, there's a lot of kids do. I remember I was working at Kennedy. I wouldn't even chase a kid. If a kid was skipping class, I'd be like, I'll catch him at lunch. If it was after lunch, I was like, I'll catch them tomorrow morning at breakfast.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these kids, those are the only 2 meals they're going to get, and they weren't going to miss it.
Wow.
So even knowing I'm looking for them, they still going to come to the cafeteria to get that food. You know what I'm saying? So now you take that kid and school's out.
Man.
How do they eat all that time?
They're eating junk. They're eating junk. That's what happened. They're eating junk.
If you're eating.
If you're in an
abusive household, you're in that abusive household all. So a lot of times, school is your escape. You're in that household all day. Yeah. So when you see these kids come back back into school, like I was, training with Slam. I had some kids, and I was sent to a mom because, a lot of people are complaining about the immaturity of the kids, or the kids are, so emotional or crying or this and that. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm a hard nose. My dad was a Marine. I get on my son for all that crying stuff too, unless it's legit. But at the same time, we've all had to. My wife has had to train me on how to be nurturing and empathetic, because she always point out, like, you don't know what's going on with them. They're not going to be able to just tell you how they're feeling. And so sometimes I have to calm down my snapping when she makes those points, because it's like, we don't. You figure my son's in sixth grade, but technically he hadn't been to school since he was in fourth grade.
Fourth grade, yeah.
Last time he was in school day to day was in fourth grade.
Crazy.
Until this year.
Yeah.
So socially, these kids are in fourth grade. Socially, your eighth graders are sixth graders. You know what I mean? Your second graders are pre-K students.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, you see what I'm saying? So it's like, You got kids coming into school, first, second grade, they can't read. They've been sitting at home or with grandma watching TV.
Yeah.
Because if I got to leave with your grandma can work Google Classroom and Zoom and all that kind of stuff. So now you're talking about that gap. So the gap happens when you have two parents, and for every kid who had two parents in the household who could make sure that kid was getting all the educational support they needed versus the kids who did not. And how do you close that gap?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's something powerful that you said too, because when we think about just the pandemic itself, right? For us, it was just, oh man, we was in the house, we couldn't really go anywhere, but as adults, we can kind of move around. But we're also three blessed individuals, right? That we actually have a home where we're at.
Right.
And sometimes it's easy to forget that, hey man, you might have, like, if I'm upset at my wife or if my kids are getting on my nerves, I have a room that I can go to and get away from everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for a lot of these kids. Like, you have 4 or 5 people in a 1 bedroom apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nowhere to go, and there's nothing, you know what I mean? And we forget that. And so when I hear you talk about those things, it kind of just brings everything to light a little bit more. It's just clearer, right? There's a huge gap, and you have to fill that gap. You mentioned slam athletics, and I definitely want to make sure that we speak on that before we end our conversation here. But just give us, what was the idea behind starting slam athletics, and also let people know exactly what that is.
Yeah, definitely. So slam back in the day, I used to coach AU ball, and that was my AU program. Shaping lives and motivating youth through athletics. That's what SLAM stands for. And so it kind of morphed when I got tired of coaching because these parents are getting crazy. So I went crazy. So SLAM is basically a sports career pathways program, teaching kids the different areas of sports that you can have a career in and be empowered through. So training is one of them, and so I train kids. The training piece just kind of blew up during the pandemic, or as the pandemic was kind of going on. Well, we were getting back outside because kids have been sitting inside the house for so long. A lot of parents wanted something safe for them to do, so we started having youth boot camps. And a big piece of that is also helping these kids, especially kids in our community, create a healthy lifestyle and learn how to work out, see the benefits of working out, and things like that, and then eventually train them to then be the trainers of the boot camp for younger kids.
Right, right.
And so it's been the response has been great. I didn't suspect it was going to be that great that quickly, but word spreads through the South Side. Also, just providing that kind of youth sports performance programming, affordable sports performance on our side of town. There aren't any really. You got Bo Bell, the trainer, who's shout out Bo Bell. He's an OG in this thing. He's had pros and does a great job with kids on this side of town. But other than that, there aren't a lot of other programs like mine. Bo basically concentrates on basketball, and I do a lot. I do basketball, but we also do strength and conditioning, speed and agility, which a lot of our kids don't get, and you won't get unless you go north of 20 and want to pay a ton of money, which a lot of our families can't have. So wanted to give them access to that kind of programming while teaching kids to take care of their health, gain confidence. Like kids who lost tons of weight, gain confidence through their abilities, increasing, the sport they want to play and things like that. So it's been a really blessing, man, and definitely looking forward to growing the sports career pathways part now that schools are back open and things like that. And so what we'll be doing is partnering with different organizations like the YMCA or schools and things like that, to where, like say for instance, if you go to a YMCA basketball game, there's somebody running that clock, there's somebody refereeing the game, there's somebody keeping the stats, there's somebody sometimes recording the game, and programs that you're paying these adults, pennies on the dollar to do this, and that's why a lot of it runs unorganized. Well, all of these places struggle with team programming, right? Because we always say teens will vote with their feet. If they like it, they'll walk into your program. If they don't, they'll walk right out.
Yep.
And so what we want
Gotcha.
to do is partner with these organizations to basically hire the kids who we have in our program to referee to run your
That's
scorecard,
great.
to do your stats, to video record the games, and make highlight reels and do post game interviews and things like that. A lot of people don't understand how much money when you go to a basketball game or a football game. The players are making a small fraction of the money. They're making a lot of money. As far as with the game itself is generating, that's just a small piece of it. Dude, a lot of people don't know NBA referees start at 6 figures.
I just learned that tonight.
Started $105,000, over $100,000. You start as a first year NBA referee, and you talking about you're not even getting the chance to work playoffs because you're a rookie. So you're talking about what, October to April?
Wow.
100,000.
Yeah.
Plus per diem, plus travel.
The business within the business. I heard that term earlier today, man. Like the business within the business is what you're teaching them.
Yeah. So, dude, when I was refereeing high school basketball, you can make 10, 12,000 in a season. Easy. Then you talk about rec ball. There's guys. There's a league in Cobb County. The dude's paying you $30 cash per game. The games are 2 16-minute halves, running clock.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of money. So that's how, so you can get these kids those kind of jobs early. Imagine if you had started refereeing and you were 16 at the Y making $200 a weekend.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And then taking all of that and teaching them financial literacy. So teaching them how to open up a Roth IRA as soon as you start getting a paycheck.
That's awesome.
And things like that. So that's what Slam is, man. And we are, if you want to check us out, we're slam.athletics on Instagram, slam athletics on Twitter, slam athletics on Facebook.
Awesome.
And if you're interested in getting involved with the sports career pathways, you know anybody that would like a mentee and they work in the, AJC or anything like that, those kind of career pathways, definitely let me know.
Dope. Well, look, Jamaal, man, hey, it's been a pleasure, bro. Like, it's always rewarding to see people that you literally grew up with, became men with, see them still progressing. You know what I mean? And so, thank you for your time, bro. We really do appreciate it. Mo, you got any final thoughts, bro?
No, man. I think, Jamaal, just big ups to you, man. You are an example of somebody that is pouring back into the community, making sure that this next generation and generations to come, honestly, because as you're impacting this generation, that's going to change the legacy of their entire family, man. So thank you for the work that you're doing in the community. Thank you for sharing your gifts with them unselfishly and keep up the good work, man. God bless you.
I appreciate y'all, man.
Absolutely.
The Black Men Think Podcast.